Good. I will request everybody to come closer, and if you don't look at your phones for 25-30 minutes, word is not going to change. We've got a fantastic panel over here, the best of the best, the CMOs of the top companies in the country. Two coming from technology company, one from e-commerce, quick commerce, and one from consumer durables, and I'm from a company which is a FMCG company. So, we were discussing about how we are going to take this, and, that the discussion was around what would you change if you were a year back, if you knew what is going to happen, what will you change? So just a quick snapshot of, what happened in last 1 year. I think a very phenomenal year in the sense that, there were lots of sports last year. There were 2 World Cups, we won one, lost one. There were 2 sets of elections, one state elections and then general elections. There were Olympics, there were IPL, lots of activity, for marketeers to do stuff. Government announced a GDP rate of growth of 6.7%. Unemployment rate, I think where it was, I think it's gone up from there. As a marketeer, we were told that, the cookies will get phased out. So lots of companies started building their first party data stack, etc. And then last month, Google said, no, we are not doing it. So, things changed there. Wars, there have been lots of wars. There's a Israel-Hamas war which is happening. There's a war happening between Russia and Ukraine that's going on. First, we thought that world will probably end and World War III will happen. Nothing like that happened. Those guys are still fighting, and thankfully we are living in a peace country with peace. Stock market outperformed everybody else for the reason best known to the stock market itself, which nobody can predict. But if we knew that these are the changes which are going to happen, how would you change things? So let's start with the lady here. What is a major insight or piece of knowledge you wish you had known a year ago, Anuradha? And how will it change your strategy for the next year?
Thank you. So, for me, I work in the IT services industry, and we work across geographies, we work across time zones. Our business is mostly in the US and UK, ANZ. A lot of us operate out of India. A lot of our talent is here. I'm based out of here. And I think in this 1 year, it's been a tough year for the IT industry. We've kind of faced a lot of challenges. We've managed to meet our targets. We've done well. But we've been very, very aggressive, very focused about, we chose what we needed to do. We were very prudent in the choices we made, in the marketing we did. A couple of things that I think I would have done better is, as a marketer, communication is really the cornerstone of marketing. And I realized that communication is key. When things get tough, you can never communicate well enough. Communications between teams, communication with leaders, you need to make the time for communication. It's not equally obvious to everyone as you think it is. Strategies change, technologies are coming. People are grappling with a very different set of priorities. Do not underestimate the power of communication. Teams seek leadership. Teams seek validation. There again, communication is key, and I think to make time as a leader, as a colleague, to make time for communication is something that I wish I had done more of. It's a very volatile, very complex environment that we live with. And I don't think everyone works in their own silos. You need to make the time for communication internally, externally, keep reiterating that, keep realigning as a team. That's very important, and I wish I had done more of that.
Another follow-up question, has business been good?
Business has been good, but it's been good with a lot of effort and focus on delivery. It has been good, thankfully, and touch wood. We've outperformed peers, but it's taken a lot of effort and a lot of focus.
Right. Now coming to Shamik. Shamik, any unexpected market shifts in India or trends that have caught you off guard, which you think, which you didn't know, and then suddenly things changed and you didn't know what to do, and and we changed your strategy, and now you're in a better state.
Yeah, I think the great question. When you were initiating this session, you talked about few things. You talked about COVID, you talked about war, you talked about uncertainty in sport, you talked about changing of dates. Now, for all of us here, when did this happen before this? This exact sequence of event, when did this happen? So, that's the answer for all of this, right? So, if you go back 100 years, exactly 100 years, we had something called industrialization. We invented machine. When we invented machine, what happened is we solved the problem for speed. Everything was handmade, machine came in, we could make it very fast. So what happened? The entire industry went through a transition, complete transition. Then we had plague, then we had war, then we had fight, and then the matured companies evolved. Right? The classical economics took a back step. Supply creates its own demand, took a back step. Keynesian economics came in. Exactly 100 years after this, we had a new thing, which is called digitization. Digital changes. We solved the problem of distance. Why we don't have too many people here? They don't need to come here. They can see it on their LinkedIn. They can see it on the... So we solved the problem of distance. Now what happened? We reimagined the entire industry. We saw all the companies, the East India Company, the GE, the things which are very huge. Where are they? Where was Google 20 years back? Where was Facebook 20 years back? So we reimagined the entire industry again. We had COVID. We are having war because it's a change in the demand and supply of this world. We have seen every company evolving where supply has created its own demand. Uber, Ola, Make My Trip, everything, Amazon, they're all supply created its own demand. So every year has been a transition, and we have been very lucky that we have seen this transition in the last 20 years. But having said that, if we follow the last 100 years and this, we are now entering a phase of maturity. We will go back to the era of profitability. We'll go back to the era of being the Keynesian economics again taking up the stage. We'll have companies with most stable background, right? So that's what my personal thing is of how the change we are seeing in this world. And I see clearly duopoly is evolving. We had so many companies which was hailing cabs, we now have 2. So many companies selling tickets, we have 2. So many e-commerce platforms, we have 2. And so many medicine delivery systems, we are having 2. 3 years back, we had 32 companies who were selling medicines online. We have 2.5 now, right? Now coming back to your question, in the last 1 year, what we did not see is that the impact of digitization so strong. We have something now called quick commerce. 2 years back, we were proud. We were sending medicines to homes in India in 2 hours. We said, no one can beat us. We have 6,000 stores. Now we are trying for 19 minutes.
So
right?
in effect,
and that's the challenge.
In effect, medicines will reach faster than the ambulance now.
We want to. Medicine is a very tough subject because we have 125,000 medicines. When you go to Blinkit or Insta, if you don't get a 1 kg oil, you are okay with the 500 grams. Yep. But in medicines, you need what is prescribed. And for that, I need to make sure if I promise a 19 minutes, at least I suffice 90% of your needs. Otherwise, it's of no use. So last 1 year we did not see quick commerce affecting medicines delivery, where people really wants their medicines in 19 minutes at their home. But we are doing that. I think adversity always creates the best in you.
Right. Our next question is to Deba. Deba, out of the syllabus question.
Come again?
Out of the syllabus question. The question is that if we were to give advice to your 1 year younger self to navigate the leadership challenges in this world of uncertainty, what would you tell your 1 year younger Deba?
Okay, so this is a little different from what we were discussing so far.
That's what I said, out of syllabus.
Yeah, so lots have changed. This is more of a personal question, I would say. Little bordering on purpose, on the personal trait. But I would say that as you climb up the leadership ladder, you need to detach yourself on a couple of things. You need to know what to let go and what not to let go. That's very important because otherwise you'll miss the larger picture. So my advice to myself is let go of a few things and get into new things. That's very important. Don't micromanage beyond a point because it doesn't help. You're suffocating your own team members by micromanaging them. Thirdly, the word passion is highly overrated and misused in today's context. Please optimize your passion. Generate passion amongst your team members and reduce your passion levels to that extent that others get an opportunity to speak and to contribute. That's something which I've learned in the last 1 year because time has come to actually create more of us, more talent in the pipeline, give them right opportunities and spread the passion around. And so the world becomes a more passionate place, not only yourself.
So another question now about the business, we were there in one of the very interesting panels last year that was on sports, before the World Cup began and, we were discussing, how sports is going to be this year and, then thereafter we had one World Cup and then the IPL and then second World Cup. What is the role of sports in your business now, given that, a lot of business has moved online and, one is seeing growth in online in all sectors, FMCG or say, look at consumer durables. What is the role of sports now? What is left with sports now?
Well, sports, we all know it's a huge platform and one can go on and on talking about that. For us, it's more to do with the topicality of the sports, right? Because we are a cooling products business and we lead the category and we have to be there amongst the masses. So sports gives us the right opportunity at the right time to leverage its reach. Having said that, sports is becoming more and more expensive. So we need to find alternate ways to leverage sports. I see a new trend coming up to use sports through connected TV perhaps, because that's something which is on the media front, I saw a change last year. That's become hugely, I would say, strategic in nature.
Right.
You see, India is selling almost 14 million panel TVs every year. That means out of that, 80% is smart. That means you are adding 12 million screens in the whole Indian ecosystem, right? That means people are watching content on those TVs.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge trend I saw, how to leverage sports through connected TV this time.
Right.
So that's something new which I observed there. Yeah.
I think what also is happening is that all TVs which are sold now, they're all connected TVs, and eventually 100% of the televisions in this country will convert to connected TV. And that's where the audience is going to be. All the audiences which are, which matter to you will probably be there.
Yes, because you don't want to strain your eyes beyond a point. You need larger screens for content, and you need more and more panels. So in the durable space, it's very interesting. There are two big categories which are growing, both in volume and value, which is contributing to this whole topic which we're discussing right now. One is cooling, and second is entertainment. Now, cooling is here to stay because we're a tropical country and weather is not supporting it any which way. So that's supporting the category but not supporting the ecosystem. So the bets are on cooling products, the bets are on entertainment because you need content. You cannot survive without content today. And so these two are emerging categories. And for these two categories, going back to the first question of sports, it's a good timing because many of the sports properties are there either before festivals or before the summer start. So that clicks very well. And durable industry is banking a lot on these two categories. We have come a long way as a brand also. Last 15 years, we have traveled the leadership journey, worked very hard to get where we are, not because of only marketing communications, but also a lot of work done in the field. I'm a market guy, less of communication, more of market. And I believe in the fact that till the time you don't make it happen at the store, it's not going to happen. So this is also one more thing I've noticed in the last 1 year. The way modern retail has grown
Right.
in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 towns is incredible. Earlier, modern retail was contributing 20% to the overall business in the industry. Today it's gone to 45%. That means you're having more and more stores opening up in tier 3, tier 4 towns, which is very, very fast.
Right.
Online business, we talk about it a lot. Somehow it's there. It's not really grown that much in terms of contribution because people are going back to touch and feel decision-making processes.
Yeah.
So these are new things which are happening, I would say post-COVID, because there's a phase of pre-COVID, there was a phase of COVID and post-COVID. We are going back to a pre-COVID scenario in terms of business dynamics. Also, we are looking at the COVID peaks of certain channels of marketing, optimizing somewhere. And peaks which were post-COVID peaks are re-emerging again.
Right. So next question now is on on AI. Like last year, if you remember last year, all the discussions were about AI, Gen AI, usage of AI in different areas. Where are we on that now, Rahul, if I may ask you, with respect to your business and general advice to the audience here? Where are we with respect to AI?
So, look, I've been in the tech industry
Yeah.
for almost in my entire career, right? And we've seen so many technologies.
Right.
He spoke about the industrial revolution, the digital revolution, etc. See, all technologies, Gartner, the tech research company, has a very interesting model called the hype cycle, right? Where they map new technologies based on the expectations people have from that technology over time, right? And it just follows this classical curve where it just peaks at some point in time, then goes down and then kind of settles down at a plateau. So Gen AI or AI in general, I think is one of the fastest peaking technologies in terms of expectations. They call it the peak of inflated expectations, okay, which means everybody expects it to change the world starting tomorrow. And it took, about a year or a little more than a year for that to happen, right? All technologies go through that cycle, but in this case, it just went up like a rocket. You saw that with internet, it took probably a decade before it could be monetized, right? I mean, same with the mobile communication tech, before it became really affordable for people, it became meaningful. And also when those apps arrived, right? Before that, it was just voice communication.
Right.
Cloud computing, every technology goes through that cycle. And then interestingly, they have this downward curve, which they call the trough of disillusionment, right? So
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. There's a particular graph which is called, I'm forgetting the name of it, when you go on the peak and of Mount Stupid, take a selfie over there.
Yes.
And go down. Right?
Yeah, that's the comic version of the hype cycle.
Right.
But yeah, so at the moment, I think the hype is at its peak, right? Every tech company, every boardrooms, tech professionals in companies are under pressure from the board to explain what their AI strategy is. Okay?
Yeah, we're going through the same right
Yeah,
now.
so without most people even understanding what it can really do, I personally believe it is as transformational as a technology as internet was. It will impact every sphere of life, every function in a company. So there is no doubt about that. It's just that the hype, unfortunately, is so huge that the trough of disillusionment will be even steeper, right? So typically, any of these technologies would take maybe 3 to 5 years before real tangible business benefits, because at the moment the hype is being created by those creative Gen AI use cases, right? I mean, manipulation of video, text, images, etc. But the real benefits will come when AI is actually embedded by businesses in their processes, right? For example, SAP, we are not an AI provider. We offer enterprise solutions where we will embed, we'll build those, or we are building those foundational models based on the customer data that we have for the last 50 years across multiple industries. So it will fundamentally transform, the insights somebody is able to draw from a business system, right? And also, the way these systems are used will change, because you'll have those co-pilots helping you to, it'll fundamentally change the way you interact with those business systems. So the real benefits will come 3 to 5 years from now. We just have to be patient. But like I said, I personally believe it is a massively transformational technology.
Yeah. Anuradha, if I were to ask you the same question, what will be your advice to people with respect to AI? I mean, where were we last year? Where are we today? And how do you think companies like, since you guys are technology companies, you know everything, right? Companies like us, rest 3 of us were, we use technology, but we don't tell technology to people. We don't sell technology. What is the advice to people like us?
So I agree with everything that was just said. What I'd like to add is that, there is this quote that you may have heard, which is that the future is already here. It's just not equally distributed. So a lot of companies are starting to use AI very, very deeply. But for mass use and application, it will take time. It needs deep inquiry, deliberation, resources, understanding. Everyone is now, after the excitement, you now realize of the pitfalls. Responsible AI is a real concern. Data privacy is a real concern. Ethics of AI. And now we are starting to address those, and businesses will start. But, we're right now, the good thing about this technology is, I think, that with social media, the visibility, it may not be equally accessible to everyone, but it's equally visible. And I think the population is in a state of play. This technology allows a lot of individuals to play with it and to see what can be, which means that the developers of tomorrow, the companies of tomorrow, the employees know the power of what this technology can deliver, because they've experienced it at some level, at a personal level, they've experienced it. They would have experienced it. From there to take it into business then will be easy.
Right.
So we're in a stage of, I think it's very exciting, but the impatience to kind of see a lot of very widespread adoption amongst companies which are not at the cusp of technologies, like FMCG companies,
Like us, yeah.
where it's not do or die. It isn't. the incremental benefit of it, of course, it will transform. You will not, any technology that you use will have AI embedded in it. But do you need AI to kind of adopt it tomorrow? No. Not every industry right now needs to adopt AI. The technologies that you use will automatically bring AI to their doorstep. So my advice would be to be patient. Do find the right technology partners who can advise you and see where it fits, what to do with it, what to make of it, where it's applicable. I think all the technology that you use will bring AI to your doorstep anyway.
Right. That's a beautiful answer. Next question is about changes in consumer behavior. I'm going to ask Deba and Shamik. What changes did you see in last 1 year? I mean, and what kind of change in consumer behaviors did you expect, and what actually happened in last 1 year? And how did you change or modify your strategy, starting with you and then?
Okay, should I take that? Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
please.
So last 1 year, I would say, has been hugely interesting for us as a category because of the fact what I spoke about earlier, weather, and that impacts consumer behavior. Believe it or not, weather impacts your decision-making processes also to a certain extent. What we are witnessing not only last 1 year but many years is there's a El Nino effect which is coming into the world, and you are having warmer and warmer summers across the world. So countries which were not in fact looking at cooling solutions are looking at it very seriously today. In India particularly, you get a El Nino summer every 4 years, and the El Nino summer is always followed by a very, very extremely hot summer. El Nino means it's a patchy summer, so the demand goes down. But immediately after that, the next summer is a very, very hot summer. That's what happened this year. And what we saw was something which was stupendous, because we have high-ticket items. We have compressor-based products. How do you forecast 100% growth in a category, 80% growth in a category? You can't, right? I wish AI could do it for us, but still we don't have that solution right now. So what I'm trying to say is that when weather comes up in a manner which is very unprecedented, you need to be very careful about how you handle your business and don't lose market share. Consumers are not loyal to the brand when it becomes a crisis situation.
Right.
And that's what we witnessed in this summer gone by. Although we maintained leadership, we had excellent growth in the industry. However, we also saw that a long tail of brands in a category like ours gains more in a highly growing industry or a high summer industry. So the challenge was to maintain brand loyalty if you're not available at the stores. And that's what we learned in terms of consumers don't want to wait. If it's hot, they need it right now, they want to deliver right now, they want instructions right now. And if you're not there in terms of fill-ins, your supply chain is not supporting you, then you lose market share. And no amount of emotive hooks, no amount of loyalty hooks can save you from a customer who wants it right now. So, and this is becoming more and more consistent with consumers, especially when they want something immediately. So how to actually manage that loyalty factor? If somebody can wait for you for a week for a product to get delivered, that's your brand strength. And I think we need to work towards that, because there will be situations in many industries where you will have growth and you will have demand, and we will not be able to forecast that demand. So, so we are very keen to work around that area and to see that this consumer behavior, this consumer trend can be tackled scientifically. Yeah.
Right. Shamik?
Yeah, I was just thinking how to address this. We believe that, first of all, who is the consumer, right? That's the biggest challenge. If you see India, you have got this 5 India in it, like the first 20%, 20 to 40%, 40 to 30%. There are 5 Indias. Now, the top 10% of India is comparable to any rich segment of population. For example, so basically in India is the 5th largest economy, right? In terms of GDP per capita, we're at 182. Right? We are 182 in per capita and 5th in terms of the size of economy. So that tells us the difference of the dichotomy that consumers are there. Now, everyone buys a brand. If you are a rich guy, you buy a brand for vanity. If you are a poor guy, you buy a brand for security. But you buy a brand. Now, consumer needs are changing. It's a pampered. I'll give you an example. I had spent a lot of time in selling insurance, and this is way back in 2004, I think 2004, 2005. I was doing a consumer satisfaction study on insurance that is there in the country because that was changing, and the result was outstanding. The most satisfied company and the least satisfied company, right? Customers rated the most satisfied at 66%. Least satisfied at 62%. So consumers don't know what they want, right? So there's nothing called, they're all me too. But now, I think what happened, as I was telling you in the past, is because of connected world, because of more information, we have a much more informed customer, right? So there are a lot more avenues. People who has done marketing 20 years back, we had to do one campaign a year, 2 channels, put them, they will take 25 days to put it on air, life is sorted. Make 2 campaigns in a year and then done. Now the marketeers needs to figure out every segment of customers. I'll give an example of how Apollo drives it, right? Now Apollo is built on about 93 million people's health data. We know more than their family knows about them. We know exactly what medicines they did, you know what exactly the family tree is, because all is connected. For us, how we define consumer is that we call it L1, L2, L3, L4. Now what is L1? L1 is where they stay. L2 is what type of medical conditions they have. For example, you can be diabetic, but what level of diabetic? You can be acute, what level of acute? You can have a smaller family, so I can forecast a baby getting born. Third, family structure. How big is the family? Are they the nuclear family? Are they the connected families? Whatever. And the fourth is how often they use the Apollo ecosystem. Now, based on this 4, we have got about 184 data variables. And if you do a combination of that, that's the consumer for us, right? So, and we want to customize healthcare solution because I can't say everything to everyone. We have to customize what I need to give. So when a provider does like that, the consumers get pampered. The need gets pampered. The expectations get pampered. And we are seeing an era of transition. I think we will be more clearer on what consumer wants as we go. We'll be more clearer how we to use technology, AI, data, connected world to make sure I suffice their needs. And I think then we can actually fathom demands, what can happen much more, with much more clarity or effectiveness. So the short answer to the entire question is, it's tough to define a consumer. Once you define a consumer, you need to get a lot of data to actually predict what they want because the needs are changing.
So, one thing I had done, I shouldn't have done this actually. I had put all the questions and I asked AI to allocate the questions to people. And when I came here, I changed the sequence, So that's very funny. So coming to now one question which will be open to all because, it shouldn't be asked to one person alone, which is about, resource allocation, about budget allocation. If you had known that things are going to be different next year, how would you allocate your budget in a different way? Or will it be the same? Starting with Deepa. A quick one, we've got 5 minutes, 57 seconds, so 1 minute each, I guess.
Quick one. So, I'd rather reduce the budgets for next year because we need to be more efficient, right? So we're looking at more tighter outlays because of the fact that there's a lot happening in the digital space where you don't have accountability of that spend. And so we look forward to a little more tighter outlays so that we become more accountable for every investment we make from a marketing perspective. We are also looking at answers of effectiveness, especially in the digital space, because I really don't have many answers to some of the questions which we keep on asking ourselves, and how is the money being utilized and how is it helping us as a business, not only in terms of just numbers from a media perspective. We look beyond that. We look at how is it helping us as a business when we invest something. So we are definitely looking at optimizing our spends in certain categories. Having said that, we are looking at also enhancing our spends in new categories we are entering. Yeah.
Right. Rahul? Sorry, out of sequence.
I think in our kind of business, obviously we work with a very finite audience, right? SAP has been in India for like 27 years now.
Yeah.
We have all of 15,000 customers, right? So we are not in the...
We are one of them.
So thank you for the business. So clearly the focus is, in a very simplistic fashion, you can segment it into two ways, right? The top end of the pyramid includes companies like yours, which I would think about maybe 3,000, 4,000 odd accounts, right, of that, which requires a lot more focused, experience-based marketing, because you have long-standing relationships in those accounts, but technologies keep changing all the time, right?
Yeah.
So the focus in terms of allocating funds would be more on the experiential account-based marketing kind of activity. But a very important segment for us, and it is actually now more than about 50% of our business, which is the new revenue, that your new ACV as we call it, is from the mid-market, right? Companies that you and me may not have heard of.
Right.
They are maturing, and we estimate about 20,000 such entities present at this point in time who can invest or need to invest in an SAP kind of ERP. Because their businesses are growing fast, and more importantly becoming more complex because of the nature of the market that we are, right? So now that part of the business requires discovery and creation of primary demand, because most of these are family-owned businesses. So it's about a significant chunk of our investment and effort from a marketing perspective goes into that audience, and that's not going to fundamentally change, but the pace of growth in the lower half of the pyramid is way faster, because the top end, I would say, is largely saturated, so the opportunity there for us is to cross-sell, upsell, but here we are actually creating new logos for the business, right? So I would say about 80-20 in that ratio.
Right. Anurad.
So one basic principle is, it's a tall claim, but one I'm very confident of: zero vanity marketing. We don't do vanity marketing at all. Very focused, back to the basics. We knew the market, so this is for the last year, and I won't change a thing. We focused on the basics, a proposition of, we believe we deliver through our people. We are a services organization. So when we hit $1 billion, we decided the best way to reiterate that promise was, when we hit $1 billion, we gave iPads to all employees. That was a big, I think it basically communicated to our clients and to our employees and our future employees what kind of an employer we are.
How many employees are there total?
We had, we're currently over 30,000, but we were about 25,000.
25,000 iPads.
Yes.
Good business by Apple.
Very good. Very good for us, because, so basically to say what is it that we want to be, we want to differentiate ourselves. We want to be, we say we deliver through people, and therefore our people are very, very strong. That's what we did.
Yeah.
We opened a library. I don't know how many of you know this, but we've opened a Coforge public library. I would encourage everyone to have a look at it in Greater Noida. It was a dream project for us. We opened a public library.
Right.
And we basically, we created our own website, a new website. So very basics. We empowered our sales teams in the markets. You know, in the markets where we are, it's very expensive to provide air cover that every marketer would like to provide. And we said we don't need to do this. So let's spend on what we must do as a brand for a very select audience, largely our employees. And in India, those are the three things we did. And the website is, you know, it's a dream project for us internally as an IT services company. Three big things we did. So less is more, no vanity marketing, back to the basics.
Right. We got about 4 seconds left, but I'll still ask one last question. Not the same question now to Shamik. The question is that, you know, how will you approach the coming year differently? What are the different things you think you would like to do? And this will be the last question, audience. Please bear with us.
You know, it's a very, very pertinent question for our business. Right. You know, as a founder member, as a chief marketing officer, you know what we did? We took 80% of our marketing budget and allocated it back to technology.
Okay.
And say that we already have 35 million people registered with us. We already have 90 million people in Apollo. What marketing will I do? I need to invest so that I can actually predict healthcare for these people better so that they stay ahead of the curve and be with us. As simple as that.
Fantastic.
So if any one of us here have Apollo 24/7 app, if you have ever been to Apollo Hospital, if you have ever been to Apollo Pharmacy, you will see how much we make things upfront for you on the app. Having said that, data security is a very important topic for us because healthcare. So we have invested a lot in terms of making sure that this data is very rightly secured. We work with everyone possible and use a lot of technology investment to make sure I help each and everyone who uses this app stay ahead of the curve. I can predict that is coming for you. And I can make sure that you can manage your health better than with us. Because data says everything in healthcare. It's a cyclical thing. So that's where we're investing.
Fantastic. With this, we have come to an end to our conversation. It's a fantastic conversation. Such amazing talent on the table today, except for me here. And I learned a lot. It was overwhelming for me to get 2 people from technology and 2 people from similar industries to come and talk here. I tried my best. It was the first time I moderated a session.
We need more investment in Google Maps.
Right.
Get her on time, right? So that's one takeaway from this session also for us.
You guys have been fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.